I was 23 when I started my internship at the Brisbane City Mortuary. Young enough to think I understood death, naive enough to believe it was just biology processes, patterns. I always told myself that nothing supernatural could exist in a place that cold and clinical. But that night, my first night performing an autopsy alone, proved me wrong in ways I still wish I could forget. It was one of those winter nights when the air feels metallic, sharp enough to sting your lungs. The mortuary halls always had a chill, but that night the temperature felt deeper, almost personal, as if the building itself disapproved of my presence. My supervisor, Dr. Harrow, handed me a clipboard before leaving for the night shift change. He smiled, tried to be reassuring, but even his voice sounded hollow as he said, "Routine case middle-aged male. Cardiac arrest. You'll be fine, Ava." I told him I would. I lied. When the clock hit 11:32 p.m., he left, and for the first time I was completely alone. My footsteps echoed too loudly as I walked toward the storage room. Drawer 19. That's where the body was waiting. The handle was icy cold when I grabbed it, and I had to use both hands to pull out the tray. A white sheet covered the man, and I felt my chest tighten as I folded it back. His eyes were open. That wasn't unheard of, but the way they stared felt wrong. Cloudy, yes, but strangely alert, like he had died mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-something unfinished. I tried closing them, but the eyelids resisted. The muscles were stiff in a way that didn't fit the timeline. I blamed the cold, the adrenaline, anything except the truth lurking at the edges of my thoughts. I began the external examination, taking photos, writing notes. The steady clicking of the camera grounded me, until it didn't. The shutter kept going even after I took my finger off the button. Click, 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 click. Too fast, too mechanical, almost frantic. I lowered it immediately, but the clicking echoed through the room, even after the camera went silent. A moment later, the body exhaled, a long, slow sigh that drifted into the air like steam. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a tray of instruments. Residual air, I told myself, completely normal, except it didn't sound normal. It sounded relieved. I picked up the scalpel anyway. I had to do the job. I had to prove I wasn't afraid, but the moment the blade touched the skin, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then the room fell into total darkness. The kind of darkness that swallows sound, sight, breath. Something moved in it. A heavy thump. Something shifting weight. Not metal, not equipment. Something with mass. "Hello?" My voice barely left my throat. No answer. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it toward the table, only to see the impossible. The body was no longer there. The sheet was on the floor. The metal tray empty. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Then a thump behind me, close, too close. I spun around, but the flashlight flickered, dying in my hand. Panic surged through me, cold and paralyzing. That's when I heard it. My name, whispered in the dark. Ava. The voice was thin, stretched, like old paper tearing. I dropped to my knees, scrambling backward, chest constricting so tightly I thought I would pass out. The darkness pressed in until it felt alive. I sensed movement, breath, presence. And then the light snapped back on. The room was perfectly normal again. The body lay on the table, perfectly still, perfectly positioned, the sheet neatly folded over the chest, as if nothing had ever happened. His eyes were now closed. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, but the part of me still clinging to logic forced me to continue. You imagined it, I told myself. Stress, exhaustion, first night jitters. So I reached out again. My hand shook violently, but I touched his arm. The body shuddered, not a twitch, not post-mortem activity, a full cold ripple down the limb. I recoiled in horror. Before I could take another breath, the overhead speakers, dead after hours, never active at night, burst into static. A slow, dragging sound came through them, like something wet moving across a microphone. Then a voice, strangled and heavy, choked out words that froze my spine. "Don't open me." The speakers hissed off. My heartbeat pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth, but still, something in me needed answers, needed to understand, needed this all to be science, not horror. So, hands trembling uncontrollably, I made the incision. The moment the scalpel touched him, tears formed at the edges of his eyes, real tears glistening, sliding down his temples. Dead men don't cry, dead eyes don't weep. But these did. His jaw moved. Bones cracked sharply as the mouth opened, and with a breath that should have been impossible, he whispered, "Run." I did. I ran so fast the corridor blurred around me, the tiles slammed under my footsteps. But then I heard another set. Wet footsteps. Bare feet slapping the ground. Following. Matching my pace. I reached the exit door, pushed it with all my strength, but it didn't open. Not because it was locked, because a pale hand pressed against the glass on the other side was holding it shut. A hand that didn't belong to anyone alive. I backed away slowly, terrified to even breathe. A whisper brushed against my ear, not from behind the door, from right beside me. "You shouldn't have touched me." I spun. Nothing. I bolted up the stairs, lungs on fire, and didn't stop until I reached the lobby. The security guard looked up, confused but calm. "You all right?" he asked. I tried to speak but froze when I saw the reflection in the glass behind him. The man from drawer 19 stood directly behind me, pale and still, staring into my eyes through the reflection. I turned around. He wasn't there. I ran out into the cold night air, shaking, gasping, promising myself I'd never step foot in that building again. But the worst part wasn't that night. The worst part came later. When they told me that there was no body scheduled for autopsy, that drawer 19 had been empty all week, that there was no middle-aged male, no cardiac arrest case, no paperwork, no clipboard. Dr. Harrow swore he hadn't handed me anything. They showed me the security footage. I watched myself walk into the autopsy room alone, work alone, speak to no one, touch nothing. There was no body, no sheet, no tools. I was alone the entire time. But I remember what I felt, what I touched, what whispered to me. And some nights when I'm alone in my apartment, I hear those same footsteps. Slow, bare, wet, crossing the tiles of my kitchen, getting closer. And sometimes, when the room goes quiet, I hear the voice again. "You shouldn't have opened me."